I'm sure you can understand why some of those symptoms I have hidden from my friends and family. I completely lost my vision for 20 minutes. I started to have electric shocks, and they were starting to happen all over my scalp area, and for some reason my heart would just start racing and jumping all over the place. So I started experiencing perimenopause symptoms about 12 to 14 months ago, but I've only just figured out that they're perimenopause symptoms about a few weeks ago. So as you can imagine, it's all been a bit of a surprise, and as a 45-year-old woman, I had no idea that at 45 I would be experiencing or could be experiencing perimenopause symptoms. The last few weeks have been a real crash course in the menopause in general, but then in the 3 stages of the menopause: the perimenopause, the menopause, and the postmenopause. And within that crash course, I've had to learn all about the various symptoms that you can get when you're in perimenopause. One of the biggest shocks to me was that you can experience up to 100 symptoms of perimenopause. There are around about 40 recognized symptoms, but medical research is now trying to prove that there could be up to 100. So that is a huge variety of symptoms that you could actually be experiencing. And I'm going to tell you all the symptoms that I have had and the ones I've been hiding from my friends and family. So it all kicked off for me with migraine auras. I have no history of migraines. I've never been one to have lots and lots of headaches or any kind of migraines at all. So these really came out of nowhere, and migraine auras are a whole new world of crazy, wild symptoms. And before I go any further, I should just make it clear that right from the get-go, I have been dealing with my doctors, consultants, optometrists, all of the medical healthcare professionals around me know exactly what I've gone through and have been able to track my symptoms. We've done loads of scans, tests, blood tests, everything you can possibly imagine, and we've all reached the same conclusion that this is perimenopause. To cut an incredibly long story short, after having a few of these migraine auras, I ended up in an accident and emergency. Basically, my doctor sent me there. She was really freaking out. She was not happy. She was very worried about me. And because of the symptoms I was having, I was in A&E, and they had to do a whole gamut of tests on me to find out what was going on. They diagnosed me with migraine auras. They sent me home, and I had to come home and basically try and figure out what migraine auras were and how I was going to be able to manage them and potentially treat them. So if you don't know what migraine auras are, they're basically when you start to get visual disturbances. I will go into much more detail in a whole separate video as to what migraine auras I get and how I experience them, because honestly, they are a really wild ride. And if you've never had one before or never heard of them, honestly, it's worth watching to kind of educate yourself on them. But to give you it in a nutshell, basically what happens is I just out of the blue, out of nowhere, I will start to kind of have visual disturbances. So for me, that's where I start to get basically like very white, bright blotches all over my vision, and they kind of come on very slowly like this. And so at the beginning, you never know what is actually happening. You're not actually sure what's going on. You're kind of thinking, is this happening? Is it not happening? And the very first time it happened to me, that kind of white spot, almost like you've looked up at the sun and then you've looked away again and you're blinking and you can see that white spot. Imagine that, but when you're actually, your eyes are open. So you're kind of looking and you're thinking, am I able to see this? What am I looking at? Where's stuff disappearing to? For me, the kind of white spots grow and grow and grow. And the first time this ever happened to me, I completely lost my vision for 20 minutes. Now, for somebody that doesn't have any history of migraines or visual disturbances, as you can imagine, this was a pretty terrifying experience, and I was in the house by myself. So I had to just kind of get myself to a chair and sit down and just try and keep myself calm and wait for my vision, thankfully, that did come back after 20 minutes. And as the white blotches start to grow and grow and grow, I then start to get black and white zigzags. They always come in from the left for me. So they kind of, these zigzags start to slowly kind of come across, I call it the screen, but you know, when you're kind of your vision, but it almost does feel like you're just kind of in a television screen. Like it feels like you're actually watching something rather than it's actually being you, because obviously you are actually then starting to watch these zigzags and these blotches, and you know that they're not there. So it kind of does feel like a very surreal experience. And then slowly, as my visions come back, the headache starts to come on. The headache that I get after that is not excruciating, it's just kind of your average headache. And then I'll basically have that headache, that migraine, for a few days after I've had the aura. So when these migraine auras started last year, I was having about one a week, and they were becoming more and more severe. And that lasted for, I think, about 3.5 months. Then all my symptoms went away. I went through a good 9 months of feeling really great, no symptoms, no migraines, and no other symptoms to deal with. Then 3 months ago, I had another migraine. Apart from this time, it wasn't a migraine aura, it was an ocular migraine. The ocular migraines are very, very similar to the migraine auras. For me, the only difference is that I don't get the zigzags, and the white blotches and the head pain and the headache and everything only stays on my left side. So it basically only appears on my left eye, and the headache and everything is only on my left side, so nothing on my right side. So then once I had my first ocular migraine, it was like honestly a domino effect. Suddenly I started to get a ton of other symptoms. It started with myosis. That's where my left pupil dilated and went very, very tiny and would not properly dilate. I was checked by an optometrist and I was given the all clear. Once I had the ocular migraine, the pain kind of transferred down into my neck. I started to get a very, very stiff neck. It was a really hot radiating pain, and that went right through the back of my neck and into the top of my shoulder. It was extremely uncomfortable, but honestly, it was just one of so many other symptoms I was having. I then started to notice tingling in my fingers, especially down my right arm. I was just kind of doing this when I was on the computer and typing and working at my laptop. I felt like I was losing sensation. It was kind of like pins and needles, but tingling, cold fingers. I really felt like my blood circulation was just not normal for me. And there was just so many other just general aches and pains that were happening all over my body. I started to notice a real increase in my weight, which was really unexplainable because our diet had not changed. Everything that we make fresh at home. So everything is home cooked from scratch, and nothing had changed in our diet. We hadn't suddenly started to add a whole bunch of different things. It was all exactly the same things and food that I've been consuming for years before. And yet for some reason I was going up a dress size over and over again, and I couldn't explain where this weight was coming from. I remember when I actually went to try and buy some new clothes, I was in changing rooms, and I actually just felt like someone had taken, like I was a helium balloon, and someone had taken some gas and put it into me and just pumped me up. I didn't feel like it was actual fat weight that I was carrying. I just felt so incredibly inflated and bloated in all directions. I started to get nausea and heart palpitations. We would just be lying in the evening watching the TV, or I'd go and have a bath, and the bath was not a very hot bath, it was just a normal kind of warm bath, and for some reason my heart would just start racing and jumping all over the place. And during the days I would start to get these big waves of nausea that again were just coming out of nowhere and were completely unexplainable. Thankfully I haven't had too many brain fog experiences, but when I have had them on days where I've just really woken up and felt like I just can't concentrate on anything, it's really been unbelievable. I literally come downstairs and get ready for the day, and I literally feel like I'm in a complete and utter daze. It's almost a bit kind of out of body. You kind of walk around the kitchen getting your tea or coffee, your things ready for the day, and you just know that you're on autopilot and you're not actually thinking clearly as to what you're actually doing. The funniest one so far was when I actually picked up my phone and I was actually just Googling some stuff on my phone, trying to read about perimenopause symptoms, and then I actually started to look for my phone to send someone a text message. Meanwhile, the phone was already in my hand. Then with the fun of the migraines and the headaches and this awful stiff neck and kind of real aching shoulder that I was getting, I started to have electric shocks, and they were starting to happen all over my scalp area. At one stage, I was really worried that I was getting shingles or something like that, because it was just so electric and it was just zapping me all over my head. And it was kind of almost staying really on my left side where I'd actually had the ocular migraine before. So I wasn't sure if it was connected. It was really worrying and a really stressful time before we finally figured out that I was perimenopausal. Those electric shocks and the headache on my left side have thankfully stopped. It did take about 3 months for them to stop. For the first, second, and pretty much the third month, I was having it on a daily basis. It's taken about 2 weeks for them to slowly subside, and now I can barely feel it. But the electric shocks seem to now be kind of transmitting everywhere. So sometimes I get them kind of around my ovaries, sometimes I get them in my lower back. I just seem to be getting them in very odd, bizarre places. A very typical perimenopause symptom which I have had is breakouts and dry skin. My skin has always been on the oily, sensitive side, but suddenly my skin just wants to drink up oil. Anything with oil in it, specifically apricot oil, apricot kernel oil. If there's any skincare that's got apricot oil in it, my skin is just absolutely absorbing it like a sponge, which I've never had before in my life. And I've had to start using hand cream. Again, that's new to me, never had to do that before, but my hands are feeling really dry, so I'm constantly applying hand cream. So you take all of these symptoms and you start to mention them to the doctor every time you see the doctor, or mention them to your family. And for me, I started to feel very much like I was being a hypochondriac. I went from being a person that's relatively healthy, no major health issues to speak of other than my endometriosis, but nothing to really to talk about on a kind of daily, weekly basis. And suddenly I felt like I was talking about different symptoms every single day. And I almost started to shame myself into saying, Kirsten, you really need to kind of minimize what you're saying to people and not tell them all of your symptoms, because you're really going to start sounding like you're making this up. So some of the symptoms I kind of hid away and didn't mention to people just to keep the symptom list down were, for example, itchy ear. I just randomly started noticing a few months ago that my scalp was itchy, but when I looked in the mirror, it wasn't dry skin. I didn't have any flakiness. There was no dandruff, nothing like that. And I have no history of that at all. So I couldn't really explain why my scalp was itchy. I kind of just wanted to pull my hair a bit and scratch my head all the time. But suddenly my ear starts itching, always my right ear and always inside. And I just kind of want to do this all the time. So I just felt like there was something in there, like maybe a hair or something. And so I was constantly doing this, kind of trying to get to the itch. So itchy ear was definitely one of the strange ones. Another one which I thought was really strange was my body odor changed. And you can imagine, after 45 years of smelling your own odor, you know what you smell like. So for it to suddenly change, it kind of comes out of nowhere. And you're kind of looking around thinking, is it me? Is it him? Is it her? Who is it? Who smells like this? Because you don't recognize it. And then you kind of look at your deodorant, and the one that I've been using every single day for I think maybe 3 years, and I absolutely love it. So I was looking at the deodorant thinking, have they changed the formula? Is it no longer working? Like, what is going on? And that's taken a bit of getting used to. And another classic perimenopause symptom, which I definitely have, is irregular periods. My periods have got a lot lighter and a lot shorter. I'm also noticing a bit of back pain, kind of right the lower part of my spine, kind of radiating out, kind of feels stiff and achy for no reason. Sleep disturbance, definitely. For some reason, I'm just waking up all the time. And when I do wake up, I'm wide awake. And even though I'm physically tired and want to go to sleep, my brain is switched on and thinking about a million different things, and trying to get back to sleep is a nightmare. And then definitely anxiety. Anxiety about really kind of trivial things, small things, things that, you know, normally I can rationalize and think, okay, there's really no need to get worked up about that. But it just kind of makes me really tense, and I just start to worry. It's like more of an anxiety of a worry rather than anxiety of like a stressed or an anger. It's just a worry, like a real deep set worry of like worrying about everything all the time. Lastly is tinnitus. For some reason, it comes out of nowhere. My ear starts ringing. It's typically only my left one, and thankfully it's not loud. So it's just kind of a buzzing, and it buzzes and just lasts for about kind of a few minutes, and then it stops. So when I lay it all out for you like that, I'm sure you can understand why some of those symptoms I have hidden from my friends and family, because to lay out the whole list of symptoms, it really is very long. And it can seem very overwhelming, not just to actually tell your friends and family that that's what you're experiencing, or your doctor, who you then think potentially might gaslight you into telling you that you're imagining half of them, but it's also worrying for yourself, because you start to actually think about how long your list of symptoms is and think, wow, my goodness, is it going to get longer? But I'm trying to remain positive, and I'm trying to keep the faith and think, okay, well, maybe some things will come off the list and new things will come onto the list, but this is part of a natural process that my body is going through. And I wanted to share my symptoms with you because in a recent study that was done in 2022, they found out that nearly 70% of women either didn't know the symptoms of perimenopause or felt like they were completely lacking in knowledge and education when it came to the menopause as a whole. And that has definitely been my experience. In 14 months, I've had multiple MRIs, blood tests, normal examinations, medical appointments, forwarding on to consultants. It has been a very worrying and stressful time for me to figure out what was going on with my body and to think that potentially there were much bigger things at play. Having to go back to my medical health team and ask them to rule out things like multiple different types of cancers, brain aneurysms, brain tumors, early onset dementia. These were all conditions that were absolutely terrifying. And so it has been a huge relief to finally figure out that it is perimenopause, and I have to tell you that that has empowered me so much. To finally know what is going on with my body and that it is a natural process and every woman will go through it has been a huge relief, and has now allowed me to be able to start researching perimenopause, learning about it, figuring out what the symptoms are, and becoming much better at managing my symptoms. And even though I'm right in the early stages of learning and educating myself about perimenopause, I've already been able to put things into practice to help me manage my symptoms. I've been going to acupuncture every single week for about 3 months, and that has helped an awful lot. The things it has most helped me with has been the nausea, the neck stiffness, and the headaches. And I've taken a really good hard look at my diet, really assessed my alcohol intake, my nutrition, my vitamins, and my minerals. I'm doing a lot more self-care, things like meditation, relaxation practices, having a nice warm bath at the end of the evening and really just closing my eyes and just relaxing, and implementing a few things before I go to sleep. So for example, I just put on a lavender oil onto my wrist, essential oil, and just make sure that my sleep hygiene is really top notch. So I hope my symptoms have given you some insight into what perimenopause symptoms can include, and reassures you that you are not alone if you are experiencing perimenopause symptoms. I'm also going to be on our blog, so as and when I learn things, I'm going to be writing blog articles and putting them up there and sharing with you what I'm learning and what my new experiences are. And don't forget, you can also share this video with friends or family, not only the women in your family, but also the men. It's really important that we open up this conversation to the men around us so that they also know what our bodies are going through at this stage of life. So thank you for watching this video. Leave your comments below, share your perimenopause symptoms with all of us, and remember, you're not alone. Wishing you a healthy, happy day.